Tobey Maguire convinced the world that he was the nice guy of Hollywood. He was quiet, reserved, and subtly charming. But over the years, the cracks in the facade began to form, and his once calm demeanor was now seen as a way to protect his secrets from being revealed. Like his involvement with some Hollywood bad boys who were up to no good, a film he made that led to a very serious lawsuit, vicious fights with paparazzi, which all built up to him allegedly running an illegal poker game where he hustled other celebrities and Wall Street executives out of tens of millions of dollars. And when you consider that Tobey pretty much disappeared from Hollywood around the exact same time all of his secrets were coming to light, it became harder and harder for fans to see him as just a humble, hardworking actor. This is the double life of Tobey Maguire, known to the world as the greatest Spider-Man ever, but he may have just been a psychopath with a master plan to get filthy rich. Starting with how he claims to be a childhood prodigy destined for greatness, even though it was technically his friendship with Leo that made him a household name. In the 1980s, Tobey Maguire's mom, Wendy, offered him $100 to study acting instead of becoming a chef. Within a year, Maguire loved it so much that he actually dropped out of high school to pursue a career in Hollywood. However, what might be seen as a mom wanting the best for her son turned out to be an act of desperation. His home life was unstable, and Tobey found himself moving around constantly while finding commercials to help Wendy pay the bills.
I think initially, because I moved around to so many different schools, socially it became really difficult for me to integrate into the school and the social thing with the kids, and I became really, well, in 6th grade, I remember I went to school in Palm Springs and I got like morning sickness for the first month. Every day I would get nauseous, and I realized later it's because I was so nervous about, meeting new kids, and then I left there abruptly and moved to a couple different schools the following school year. And I think I just wanted to give up on forming new relationships.
Performing became Tobey's entire life. He knew this was his destiny. He said, "I'm self-aware enough to understand that it's statistically very hard to achieve the position I'm in, but I also think I have a lot of ingredients that are right for the path that I've chosen. I find the way, like water. I like to be productive. I'm constantly reflecting on personal progress. And since I was around 15, I knew I'd be successful. Since I was 17 or 18, I always knew I wanted to live a great version of my life. And so I got those ideas, and they have been North Stars to me." Tobey seems to approach his Hollywood career like a corporate CEO executing a plan. No matter what, he finds a way, which is probably why he wouldn't want to admit this, but Tobey's key to success in Hollywood was becoming friends with Leonardo DiCaprio. Leo described how they first met in the 80s. "I literally jumped out of the car. I was like, Tobey, hey. And he was like, oh yeah, I know you, you're that guy. But I just made him my pal. When I want someone to be my friend, I just make them my friend." Tobey didn't realize it at the time, but he just became friends with a future Hollywood legend. But in the beginning, Tobey and Leo were always auditioning for the same role, and with a competitor like DiCaprio, Maguire lost almost every time. But since Leo was a good friend, he'd do his best to get Tobey a supporting role or a guest spot in whatever he was hired for. The two earliest examples were the TV series Parenthood and 1993's This Boy's Life, where Leo got the main role but managed to get Tobey a tertiary role. But even in their personal friend group, Leo outshined Tobey with his natural charisma, while Tobey was the introvert keeping to himself.
Congratulations on your movie, and I hope you do well in Canada.
Thank you.
Okay, I know. Wait, hold on. Okay, and can we get a token black guy in here or something? Oh, yeah, Jake. Ready?
And as the two would continue to grow in fame, they would start to develop a bad boy reputation behind the scenes. Leo and Tobey formed an entourage notorious for chasing women and allegedly assaulting innocent people. It became so controversial that they would try to remove any evidence that this ever existed, because if anyone was able to validate these stories, it had the potential to destroy their careers. By 1993, Tobey Maguire got a taste of fame before he even got his first big break, all because his best friend had just starred in What's Eating Gilbert Grape alongside Johnny Depp. While it didn't make much at the box office, the biggest names in Hollywood were now familiar with DiCaprio. Suddenly, Tobey found himself doing ride-alongs with Leo where they would go clubbing, hit exclusive restaurants, and experience what it is like to be members of the industry's upper class. The inner circle consisted of Tobey, Leo, Lucas Haas, and Kevin Connolly, but it also included aspiring or soon-to-be megastars like David Blaine, Jay Ferguson, Josh Miller, Ethan Suplee, and Scott Bloom. As DiCaprio continued to get more and more famous through movies like The Basketball Diaries, The Quick and the Dead, and Romeo and Juliet, all of the young guys around him elevated in fame just for being his friend. The only person who claimed to hold on to his own identity was Tobey. He refused to talk too much about his relationships and made serious efforts to look as polite as he possibly could on camera.
Now, how do you get involved with those creeps?
Bunch of punks.
Are you really good friends with Leonardo DiCaprio?
I've been friends with him for years, like 11, 12 years.
Yeah, you're on his level.
But I have even talked to David Blaine about this. He said, hanging out with Leonardo DiCaprio, my whole identity got lost. I became Leonardo DiCaprio's friend and part of his posse, and it was very upsetting.
Screw that.
That didn't bother you.
You don't find that bothersome?
I've always been the like independent, quiet one, and I keep myself separate in terms of like press and all that, and you know, otherwise I'm just his friend. And I understand what David's saying. There's definitely, he gets a lot of attention. You know, the guy's very magnetic. He's like Marlon Brando or something, you know.
And as a result, he started building his own star power, like his roles in The Ice Storm and Deconstructing Harry. Directors and producers picked up on his quiet demeanor, and he started being typecast as a quiet and reserved nerdy guy in larger films. According to Kevin Connolly, Leo was definitely the ringleader, but Tobey was also a superstar in the making.
Even like Tobey was a guy who was just always right. And they were like, all right, this guy, he was just like, his picture was just on everybody's wall. Like, the right thing is going to come along. Yeah. He's a guy that his career was inevitable.
The years 1997 and 1998 were the first golden era for Tobey Maguire and Leonardo DiCaprio. Leo's latest film, The Titanic, essentially made him the world's most popular actor for several years. His part as Jack Dawson made him a global symbol. Meanwhile, Tobey had finally made his way into major award-worthy films with a brief but memorable part in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and a starring role in Pleasantville alongside Reese Witherspoon. Neither was an absolute blockbuster like Leo's film, but both became cult classics that fans obsess over. He was also in the process of filming Cider House Rules, a movie that would go on to win 8 Academy Awards and get 30 nominations. Now, for most actors, this would be a dream come true, but Tobey's relationship with Leo was about to threaten his nice guy persona, and according to people who worked closely with him, he was willing to do anything to make sure his true nature remained a mystery. In 1998, New York Magazine published an expose article titled Leo, Prince of the City, which was about DiCaprio, Maguire, and the rest of their friend group. The group was infamously named as the Pussy Posse, although actor Kevin Connolly vehemently denies that they gave themselves this name.
You were very famously a member of the Posse.
Yeah, or what channel is this?
Leo DiCaprio, Tobey Maguire, David Blaine, all these guys. Who got the most put in the Posse?
Well, listen. First of all, if I could set that straight,
yes.
That was there was a New York Magazine article written years ago, and the writer of the magazine coined that phrase.
Got it. You guys didn't coin yourself.
With my hand on the Bible, I swear to you, never, ever, ever, in any capacity, have myself or any of our friends ever referred to ourselves as the Posse. This guy wrote it, and it stuck.
Now, according to the journalist, Nancy Sales, the P Posse wasn't a name she had come up with herself. It was just something she kept hearing when she would follow closely behind members of the group. In her own words, the group's core members constitute a frat house of young men, some of whom are actually famous, like Leo. There's Lucas Haas, who has not yet become Leo, and Tobey Maguire, the pensive youth in The Ice Storm, who is perhaps waiting to. She also went on and described Leo's insane star power, where he would get into clubs where Mariah Carey would have to wait in line, along with a growing group of friends in the outer circle who would buy him drinks as soon as he asked for them. Without being able to reach Leo directly, Nancy would have to rely on information from bartenders waiters and waitresses. One of them stated, "He does not tip. He gets his friends to go to the bar for his drinks. He was in here with Julie Delpy. I could not understand it. She's a very nice girl. French. He is cheap." In return for their loyalty, Leo would pay his friends back using his fame to improve their careers, like how he appeared on TLC with David Blaine to help him promote his very first TV special.
When you did magic to me, at that party, it was right in front of my face. It was, one-on-one. I couldn't help but be interested again. So why are you now doing a TV special? I mean, I'm curious. How do you think your stuff is going to translate? It's so different than what's been done before.
I don't work with fancy props. There's no beautiful showgirls. There's no elaborate sets. I work with people. It makes the magic spontaneous. It's like everybody's trying to do the next biggest special effect. I mean, it gets bigger and bigger.
However, rumors circulated that the P Posse members were prone to spiraling out of control. One allegation was that Leo would pelt people with grapes and trash before getting his chauffeur to help him escape. Tobey and the other guys allegedly set off stink bombs in exclusive bars and clubs and would start fistfights with paparazzi. Now, if this were the actions of 14 and 15-year-old suburban boys, it would probably seem normal. But these guys were famous and approaching their mid-20s, which makes the behavior less excusable. But of course, what gave the P Posse their name was how they allegedly interacted with women and tried to get them into bed by any means necessary. In one instance, they reportedly tried to get DiCaprio with the actress Elizabeth Berkley. A publicist named Karen Tenzer apparently told Berkley at a party, "Jay Ferguson and Leo are going crazy for you, and they want you to come to Elaine's after this, without Roger Wilson," her boyfriend at the time. But when Elizabeth refused, the group allegedly started calling her house. "The next morning on my voicemail," says Berkley, "there was a message from Jay saying, 'Hey baby, Karen gave me your number. We're going out to dinner later. We want you to come.'" Berkley didn't know that the publicist was basically just a plant trying to coerce her into hanging out with the P Posse. And according to Berkley, the publicist left her 7 different voicemails. She stated that Karen said, "Why didn't you call Jay back? Your presence is requested here." Her tone was very impatient, and I said, "What? Are you trying to deliver me to these guys, Karen?" And she said, "Well, At this point, Berkley was obviously scared and decided to involve her then boyfriend, Roger Wilson. Wilson told New York Magazine that he tried to set them straight without escalating the situation. "I know you guys are having a great time and the town is your apple, but not this part of town. I don't know how this got started, but I'm just asking you to please not call my home again. And Elizabeth has asked please that you not call her again, okay?" According to Wilson, one of the boys from the posse lashed out saying, "We'll call whoever we want, and if you don't effing like it, then why don't you come down here and tell us to our face?" Unfortunately, it did escalate, and it got to the point that the posse allegedly confronted Wilson in front of a hotel, punched him in the throat, and then ran off to avoid ruining their reputations. And even though this was a massive expose on one of Hollywood's newest stars, nobody ever corroborated these stories. There was nothing in Nancy's story that could prove it was true without some kind of physical evidence. However, there was something that came out later that did have some people thinking those allegations might hold some weight, and it came in the form of a short film called Don's Plum, which was so bad that it actually led to a lawsuit where Tobey and Leo gave sworn depositions. Don's Plum was filmed in 1995, and it was an extremely weird indie film where Tobey and Leo act like extremely cruel young guys to women.
Stop looking at me like that. I'll throw a bottle at your face, you goddamn whore.
But what made it interesting was that it was scarily similar to Nancy's claims in the P Posse expose article. The indie film followed young guys in their 20s who met at a diner to complain about life, flirt with women, then insult those same women, insult each other, and the conversation slowly devolved into awkward power games and emotional manipulation. The cast even reflected the dynamic of the posse in real life. Leo was in the center as Derek, but the character was highly judgmental and insulted people for their sexual orientation or race, also frequently using the F slur. Meanwhile, Tobey was in a supporting role as Ian, a shy and reserved guy who would laugh at Leo's jokes while secretly wishing he could shamelessly sleep around and get his 15 minutes of fame.
You want a veggie sandwich still?
I want a veggie sandwich, no.
See? I have a bread.
You're good. Wheat toast. Lettuce. Shredded up. You know, the usual. Anyway.
And you want very well done chicken wings.
Right, not too well done, okay, sweetie?
Okay.
Just
chicken wings.
A little bit crunchy.
Okay.
Just like you.
Crunchy. That's interesting.
Go put that order in, Flo.
Okay.
All right, babe.
I'm
Love
so
you.
happy you're here.
Go, Flo, go. Out of here. bro. Send her back to sea, bro. That chick is fat.
By the end of the night, nothing is resolved. The characters are just left sitting in their own ugliness, stripped of the cool, mysterious image that they think they are projecting. Now, of course, Don's Plum was technically a work of fiction. It was allegedly just an improvising acting exercise, with Leo and Tobey never thinking it would ever be released. According to the producer and director, Dale Wheatley, as well as his co-producers, the possible release of Don's Plum made Tobey lose his mind. After hearing about the first version of the film that was intended for release, Tobey allegedly got his manager involved to try and remove any of the improvised lines that would hurt his image as an up-and-coming actor.
I believe Tobey and his manager wanted to view the movie to make sure that Tobey's performance was up to par, that it supported that he's a really good actor. I think they had maybe some concerns that he came across a little bit weak on film.
And there must be some truth to this allegation, because Tobey would end up shooting additional scenes after that dinner table scene to make him look even better. But after the first screening, Maguire did everything he could to shut it down before it went global.
He started suggesting that there was shady business about Don's Plum, and that he had a problem with that, and he felt like we were withholding from him and from the others information that they should know about, and that we haven't been on the up and up from the beginning. And Artie was kind of having none of it, and Artie was like, what do you really want? Tobey, why are you here? Why are you really here? And the thing started boiling up, probably as the macaroni was boiling up. And finally, Tobey loses it. He comes completely undone and he starts screaming, "I want Don's Plum to burn!" And he's screaming and his veins are coming out on his neck. And it was just rage, pure, unadulterated rage.
Leo seemingly felt the same way, and he allegedly made the posse turn on the director in a private meeting.
In a way, life was starting to imitate art. Leo was becoming more and more like Derek, the way he acted, the things that he said. He knew that we had been already invited to Sundance. He goes, "This movie isn't going to be in Sundance. My agents run this town and they run Sundance, and believe me, that movie's not going to be in Sundance. Your movie's not going to be anywhere. My agents run this town."
In response, Dale Wheatley's legal team eventually had to get involved to save the film. What followed was a countersuit from Tobey and Leo, claiming that Don's Plum was supposed to be a short film and they had been lied to from the very beginning. But when Tobey finally got the chance to speak up and give his deposition, he didn't say much, and he always looked as if he was hiding something.
Did you voice any type of objection to Don's Plum being anything more than a short?
I don't recall.
Did you hear anybody else object to that?
I don't recall.
On the other hand, Leo was much more straightforward that this was nothing more than improvising, not a real film.
I never had any intention of doing a feature film. The agreement had always been that this was a short film. I would never go in for one night and improvise with my friends and make a feature film. There's no way I would ever do that.
Regardless of which details of this story you believe, it's pretty clear that the reason they did not want this film to be released was because it made them both look like disgusting pigs at a time when their careers were about to explode. Director Dale Wheatley lost his lawsuit and had been essentially blacklisted ever since. When it came to the movie itself, Don's Plum was officially released in 2001, but eventually banned from being distributed in the US and Canada, which is why very few people even know it exists. They successfully dodged a major bullet, and as a result, Tobey continued to ascend and become a major Hollywood star. His efforts to be portrayed as a nice guy were paying off, and he was about to become a billion-dollar asset that would kick off Marvel Entertainment's absolute dominance in Hollywood. In 2001, Sam Raimi was tasked with making a live-action adaptation of the comic book Spider-Man, a classic superhero story about a young, socially awkward guy named Peter Parker who gets special powers after being bitten by a spider during a field trip. Raimi's mission was to depict the most relatable and believable superhero of all time.
Well, I try to always be true to the character of Peter Parker and deal with him honestly, like in any dramatic motion picture. Sometimes in the comic book movies, they take a step back from reality, even when dealing with the characters. But I decided to take a different approach and make it as real as possible, so that the audience believed that they could believe in this hero, in this man. And That was really my guide all the way through the performance pieces.
Some actors considered for the role included DiCaprio, Freddie Prinze Jr., Jude Law, James Franco, Jason Schwartzman, Jake Gyllenhaal, and Heath Ledger. However, Raimi felt the only logical choice had to be Tobey Maguire.
In Sam's mind, I think I was the guy, but the studio wasn't sold on me immediately.
And when they weren't sold on you, isn't it true he went and shot some film with you to prove to them that you'd be a good Spider-Man?
It was a bit of a process, but first we did like an audition on videotape in a little room, and they got it. Took them a couple weeks to see it.
Were you insulted?
My ego was rubbed a little bit, you know.
And once Tobey got the part, it was clear this was the role he was born to play. He captured the spirit of the everyday kid and was able to share a kind of vulnerability on screen that made guys in high school empathize with his character. A lot of young guys can relate to the loss of a father figure and struggling with adolescence.
He's a superhero, but as you said, he's a normal, kind of ordinary kid who's an underdog. I love underdogs, you know. He gets picked on by the bully. He doesn't know how to share himself with the girl that he has great affection for. It's difficult for him.
On the other hand, the movie was able to share action sequences that were fun and didn't take themselves too seriously until it was necessary. As much as Tobey Maguire was perfect for Spider-Man, a lot of the credit goes to Sam Raimi for understanding that Tobey had a true talent for looking innocent and shy. Spider-Man was a coming-of-age film just as much as it was a superhero movie, and even with a massive budget of about $139 million, it managed to rake in over $800 million at the worldwide box office. Tobey is just a childhood hero of mine. No matter how great Tom acts, Tobey's just the greatest in my heart. With massive critical and box office success, the second Spider-Man movie went into production almost immediately. It followed a similar formula to the last movie, where Peter Parker had to face off against a villain named Otto Octavius, or Doc Ock, after he lost his mind trying to play God. Even with all the success of the first film, Tobey was a little hesitant to get deeper into the role. He had just starred in the Oscar-nominated movie Seabiscuit and always saw himself as a more serious actor. Tobey really seemed to worry about getting attached to a franchise that could prevent him from accepting more challenging roles.
What I liked about it was Sam's approach to the whole movie. You know, when I first heard about it, I was a little reluctant about the idea, but I went and talked to Sam, and he just talked about it from the standpoint of character. He really wanted this to come from character, you know, these real kind of people, and a coming-of-age story about this kind of ordinary kid who becomes a superhero and who's struggling with the big questions in life, along with like the regular personal stuff and desires. And I really liked that approach, and I thought it would be interesting to bring, you know, my sensibility together with Sam's for this kind of movie.
And once again, this proved to be the best decision for Tobey's career. The amount of money that Spider-Man 2 made at the box office was almost identical to the last. Not only that, but it's widely considered to be the best Spider-Man movie of the entire franchise. I personally like the first one more though. Tobey's salary was to the tune of $17 million, officially making him a member of the Hollywood elite. It was like all of his childhood dreams of making it big had officially become a reality. As a kid, I was very poor. I mean, it's all relative, but we would get groceries from neighbors. I always had a roof over my head, but I slept on couches of relatives, and some nights we wandered into a shelter. My family had food stamps and government medical insurance, and I wanted to get out of that, so my ambition was initially to make money. I was pretty driven, and with all this newfound wealth, Tobey got into hobbies with a bit more risk. In 2004, he started playing competitive poker and quickly discovered he had great skills beyond acting.
Are you good at memorizing cards and where things are?
Well, yeah, I'm okay. I'm pretty good at that.
Like, what's your biggest win sitting down and playing poker? If you don't mind, I'm just curious.
You know, I played in this tournament, which it's different than playing in a cash game, and and you know, it was a fairly big win.
Fairly, but no, like what? Is it more than $50,000?
It was more than 50,000. Yeah, a little bit more, a little bit. Yeah, so it was a big win.
Wow.
Very big, but I didn't risk that much money in order to get that.
Look, like I'm the wife. Listen to you television.
But for Tobey, all of this new attention would become a serious problem. After the fans' disappointment following Spider-Man 3, it was almost like we were starting to see Maguire's mask start to slip. Like the Tobey everyone was used to was just another character he was getting tired of playing. In 2007, the hype surrounding the release of Spider-Man 3 made it one of the most highly anticipated moments of the decade, but behind the scenes, things were quickly starting to fall apart, especially when it came to introducing the villain called Venom. To Sam Raimi, the right villain was Sandman because he had more human qualities. The best thing I like about Stan Lee and Steve Ditko's Spider-Man is that they made relatable characters that I understand, even if they were confused, like Norman Osborn. They still have goodness in their heart. When I read about Venom, which I hadn't read as a kid, I had to catch up on it when they wanted him to be in the movie, I didn't recognize enough humanity within that character to be able to identify with him properly. That's really what it boils down to. But as Spider-Man became a major asset for Marvel Studios and Sony, executives pushed for Venom because it was a fan favorite, and since they were funding the project, whatever they wanted, they got. And while the third movie in the Spider-Man trilogy ended up being the highest grossing movie yet at $885 million, the initial response wasn't nearly as positive as people would have hoped. The original consensus among fans was that the movie felt like it lacked the balance of the previous two films. On screen, you could almost feel the off-screen battle between Raimi and the executives when it came to the major villains. Ultimately, Sandman was the villain who got a large amount of screen time. The character has always been one of the villains that people can sympathize with, and because Raimi saw the humanity in the Sandman story, Venom barely received any screen time at all. Beyond giving Peter Parker a cool black suit as a symbiote Spider-Man, fans who never read the comic books had no idea what Venom was supposed to be. Venom never spoke and looked like some kind of screeching alien without any complex thought or motive. Not to mention that the rivalry between Peter Parker and Harry Osborn wasn't even completed yet. There was just too much to unpack in one film. However, there were some highlights. Possibly the most memorable part of the movie was Tobey Maguire's elite dance moves and him dressing up like a misunderstood emo teen. He was very unconvincing whenever he got mad or tried to be intimidating, which honestly made it funny.
Give me rent. You'll get your rent when you fix this damn door!
Ultimately, fans felt like this was just way too much to pack into a single movie. Too many villains, and not enough of an actual story. Also, Tobey Maguire just didn't seem to be as into the role of Spider-Man as he once was. Fans started to wonder if he actually cared about this role, or if he was just getting a paycheck. Plus, his body just wasn't built for stunts like other actors, and his pain from his early roles almost got him cut from the final film.
Well, I had some back pain during Spider-Man 1 and through Seabiscuit, and it got kind of bad at the end of Seabiscuit. And so what I had to do is just change some things with my workouts and stretching routine.
However, the fame and paparazzi that came along with being the star of a massive trilogy started pushing Tobey over the edge.
Yeah, block him in, guys. Go! Hey, Tobey, you're good. It's got his car. Okay, back up, guys. You can't see the car. All right. Out of the way! I can't see! There are cars there, mother. Get out of the way! We're blocking the cars for you. Thank you, Spider-Man.
And while almost every star has gotten upset with a camera in their face, Tobey was constantly going viral for how he seemed to hate it more than anyone else. Like when he got physical with a man who was filming him walking on the street. Now, paparazzi are definitely known for pushing celebrities to their limits and robbing them of their sanity. But after Spider-Man 3, Tobey Maguire just seemed like a different person. It felt like he almost completely disappeared from the spotlight after reaching insane levels of fame, and the public wouldn't really hear about him again until he became a part of a massive scandal where he started being accused of running an underground celebrity poker game. It finally looked like fans were starting to see what Maguire had been hiding for all these years. They couldn't help but wonder if Tobey Maguire was a shy actor struggling with fame, or if he was a cold and calculated psychopath that only ever cared about the money. In 2011, Tobey Maguire found himself in a massive civil lawsuit involving a Beverly Hills hedge fund manager named Brad Ruderman. According to the suit, Tobey managed to take $311,000 off of him, with $110,000 of that coming in just one night. The major problem was that Ruderman was playing with stolen money through a $44 million scheme where he had convinced investors to give him large sums of cash cash and promised high returns, only to pay people back and lie about how he managed to make them a fortune. Now, Tobey wasn't just caught at the wrong place at the wrong time. He might have actually been the ringleader of an illegal gambling operation. A producer named Houston Curtis would later write a book called $1 Billion Hollywood Heist, based on his experience at one of Hollywood's most exclusive illegal poker games.
Kind of steered me over to a seat and just sat me down right next to Tobey. And yeah, we played all night, and we knew a lot of the same people. And, you know, he was soaking the game up like a sponge, and some of the guys were talking about that. But what really fascinated me was to see how these guys acted around a celebrity.
Curtis and Tobey met after he had just finished filming Spider-Man 2 and had money to burn. A week later, Tobey showed up at his house. We played together a few times, and he invited me to his game. I almost immediately started staying late at his house. We discussed the game, how to make it bigger, who to invite. We had similar views on a lot of issues. We thought out an unofficial business plan together and began to follow it, and our game began to develop rapidly. Tobey would bring in Hollywood superstars to play, which made the game more enticing and interesting for young billionaires and hedge fund guys. Because this was a high roller type of environment, the biggest recurring guest celebrities were Ben Affleck, who would bring Matt Damon, and Tobey Maguire's close friend Leonardo DiCaprio. But according to Curtis, DiCaprio was the hardest celebrity to get. Tobey would have to stake Leo every time because he never wanted to use his own money. DiCaprio is a guy worth $80 million, and he didn't want to put up the $5,000 buy-in. But Tobey said, "Don't worry, he only plays aces and kings." And he did. Leo was tighter than a gnat's ass. As the game started growing, Tobey and Curtis reached out to Darren Feinstein, the new owner of the infamous Viper Club, and this is where they met Molly Bloom.
They had a bunch of holdings. They had some real estate, they had some restaurants,
Right.
they had a fund.
So you became his EA, his PA?
Yeah.
And this led you to poker?
Yes. He came in the office one day and he said, and there are always zany things sort of like thrown at me. And he said, I need you to serve drinks at my poker game tomorrow night.
If you're starting to think this sounds familiar, then you've probably at least heard of the 2017 movie Molly's Game. The movie was partly written by Molly and tells the story of how she went from being an Olympic skier to serving drinks, only to end up running one of the most sophisticated high-stakes New York poker games in history. It consequently led to her arrest and later allowed her to sell her story for a fortune. However, Curtis writes in his book that Molly was essentially just a pawn in a much bigger game that she didn't understand. He told us that he had a pretty assistant who could serve the drinks, and Molly turned out to be a diligent student. I don't mean in playing poker, she's never been interested in that, but she perfectly remembered the drinks preferences of the guests and took contact details from everyone. Then she and Darren had a fight, and she complained about him to one of the players she was dating at the time. The film emphasizes that she never had a relationship with any of the players. I'll try not to comment on that, but let's say it amused me a lot. In short, they came up to us, said that Darren was trying to take the game away, and threatened to hold it elsewhere the next day. And if you've seen the movie Molly's Game, Player X, played by Michael Cera, is a calm, calculated, seemingly nice guy, but he is conniving, rude, and secretly at war with Molly. Player X is rumored to be depicting the real-life Tobey Maguire. Allegedly, Tobey became the brains of the operation, and he felt that a $5,000 buy-in was just far too low. The game was very accessible. Many dreamed of playing at the same table with Tobey or Leo, and for that experience, at that low price of $5,000 was pretty insignificant to them. Some players were already managing to rebuy twice within the first round. We didn't invite people in off the street and understood that no one would leave after losing $5K in 5 minutes. This scheme seemed perfect to me, but Tobey decided that everything would work the same way for bigger money. We raised the blinds to $200, $400 and the buy-in to $50K. From a profit-oriented perspective, Tobey was right. The $50,000 buy-in made the game seem even more elite and exclusive. In Curtis's book, he talks about making millions of dollars, but admits that Tobey was always the star player who came out on top. Tobey was winning an average of $1 million a month for 3 years. That is, he has earned about $36 million in poker over the whole period. If this is an accurate number, that would mean that Tobey was essentially doubling what he had made as Spider-Man. It also kind of explained why he wasn't bothering with acting in more major movies. He had all of the money he could ever want. But it wasn't just the fact that Tobey was essentially hustling these guys out of their money, it was also that he was an while doing it. Poker games are pretty notorious for being what could be called locker room talk, where guys get together and say things they'd never share with the rest of the world. For example, it's rumored that producer Rick Salomon kept prodding Ben Affleck about Jennifer Lopez's body. Did her have cellulite on it, or was it nice? Salomon asked. The table was stunned into silence before Affleck replied, it was nice. But that's pretty mild compared to how Tobey Maguire apparently handled anyone who stood between him and his money. While Molly Bloom claims that she was the one running the games in LA, Curtis said that Tobey saw her as more of a low-class leech. She was reportedly taking home over $30,000 in tips alone every night. According to Curtis, Tobey would go into fits of rage thinking about Molly and how she didn't deserve to be there. At one point, he apparently tried making her bark like a seal for a $1,000 chip. She wouldn't do it, but he still gave her $1,000 that night. $1,000 was his insult tip. But Molly wasn't Tobey's only victim. Curtis himself was losing money from the devaluation of his house, the loss of a $4 million distribution deal, and other major losses in Vegas. After a rough phone call, Maguire offered to loan him $600,000 to continue playing until he paid him back. But after Curtis offered to pay it back by the end of the year with 10% interest, Tobey allegedly said, I own you now, and I'm gonna make so much effing money this year at poker. Unfortunately for Maguire, these were his famous last words. The poker game blew up after the arrest of Brad Ruderman, and the lawsuit later forced him to pay $80,000 to Ruderman's victims. The game was over, and Tobey came out looking a bit like a psychopath with a secret side hustle. This was the lowest point in Tobey Maguire's vanishing career, and just like the very beginning, he'd have to rely on Leonardo DiCaprio again to get some work in Hollywood. After Tobey was exposed in the poker bust, he had effectively lost his purpose in an industry where he was once universally loved. He'd only star in an obscure movie called The Details, which bombed so hard for critics and fans that most people don't even know it exists. The only other big film he was able to star in after the fallout was The Great Gatsby, and even then, Tobey technically didn't get the role of Nick Carraway from his own merit. It was Leo who got the starring role and managed to convince the director to hire his buddy. Even after 2 decades, Leo was still convincing Hollywood to hire Tobey. Maguire was constantly asked about what it's like to work with one of the greatest actors in the industry, to the point where it became a running joke.
About what's it like working with Leo? What? Got it. Maybe I'll take that part first and work backwards a little bit.
To make matters worse, The Great Gatsby was arguably one of the least successful films that Leo had ever made. It was one of those movies where both critics and audiences seemed to agree that the movie just missed the mark, which kind of made it look like Tobey had lost everything that made him valuable to cinema. He was in DiCaprio's shadow once again, and even that couldn't save him from fading away. He really only returned to the spotlight due to a cameo in Spider-Man No Way Home alongside Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland. But luckily for Tobey, his appearance reminded older fans about the impact that he had in the early 2000s. Reviews were so positive for the 2021 Spider-Man that it actually made fans revisit the old trilogy and appreciate the third movie for what it was. People started to laugh at Tobey's insane behavior in the third film, and a viral meme trend emerged called Bully Maguire, where fans would make compilations of their favorite clips of Tobey remixed into new scenarios to make it seem like Maguire is bullying other characters.
I don't want to see you anymore.
I'm gonna put some dirt in your eye. Stings, doesn't it? Be a chump.
The swagger and confidence of Bully Maguire is top-notch. But Spider-Man No Way Home didn't mean Tobey was back. He is still a rare sight on the big screen. He's only acted in 6 films in the past 15 years, and while he hasn't been in many starring roles, he still produces films on the side. Because Tobey has remained quiet and somber his entire career, we constantly have to fill in the gaps to figure out who this guy truly is. Whether Tobey was a shy actor crushed by fame, or a calculated player who beat Hollywood at its own game, depends on how you interpret his silence. Because Tobey didn't necessarily have this massive public downward spiral, nor did he beg for redemption. He just kind of disappeared and only comes back when it's convenient for him. Maybe that's what makes Tobey such a great poker player, because he knows when to fold. Hollywood and poker are very similar. The people who bow out early aren't necessarily losers, but just those who figured out it's only going to get worse if you keep going. It's kind of crazy that Spider-Man's best friend, Harry Osborn, was played by James Franco, considering his real-life Hollywood downfall ended up being way messier than any villain arc. But if you want that full story, check out this video.